Hey guys, if you like sports and you're a fan of Michael Franzese, the most famous mob boss on YouTube, then you're going to love what we have planned. In a once-in-a-lifetime event, join us in the $2 Sports Club for an uncensored interview with the Mafia Don himself, where you get to ask the questions. That's right, any question you want. So right now you're probably thinking, what the heck is the $2 Sports Club? Well, the $2 Sports Club is the hottest thing on the internet right now, with uncut live interviews from some of your favorite stars of sports and culture, articles and videos from some of the hottest up-and-coming writers in sports, and special deals offered to our members that they can't get anywhere else. Now, if you love sports and you love to be in the know, the $2 Sports Club is the place to be. And today, we've got some breaking news. Along with all the amazing content that I just talked about, the $2 Sports Club just signed me, the sports trader, to provide exclusive seminars on predictive sports analytics. I normally charge up to $5,000 for one of my talks, but if you join the $2 Sports Club today, you get those seminars for free, along with all the other great content that I was talking about, including that once-in-a-lifetime interview with Michael Franzese. And that's right, it's only $2. Join today by clicking the link and becoming a charter member today. What are you waiting for? Click the link. And we're live, just like that, just that quick. Excuse me, guys. Welcome to the big show, ladies and gentlemen. My name is John Todora, and I'll be your host today for the What's on Sports podcast. And we have a huge announcement coming up today. Actually, that's why we're starting the show by myself. Hopefully, Lance will join us in just a little bit. But for right now, I do want to talk about something that's kind of important. I just signed a huge deal, guys. I just signed a deal with a company that owns What's on Sports. I was helping out with the podcast for a little bit. They just signed me to a deal to be part of the $2 Sports Club that they just opened up. Now, what is the $2 Sports Club? I just played a little clip before the show started, so you kind of get an idea of what it is, but let me break it down for you. Most importantly, the $2 Sports Club is a revolutionary new place where people can go, congregate, and talk about sports. And the best part about the $2 Sports Club is all the freebies and cool stuff that you guys are going to get. Now, not only do you get content from our website, whatsonsports.com, and all the exclusive behind the scenes stuff that goes on there, but you also get some really cool stuff. And I'm going to show you one of the things that you get. For those of you listening on the podcast, you won't see this, but for those of you out there, you'll see this is my new book. It's called Zero Correlation Investing. It's the score metric secret. This book is actually filled with lots of there's my little picture on the back. This book is actually filled with lots of really cool stuff. This is actually how I figured out how to go from being a guy that was kind of wealthy to a guy that was kind of bankrupt, back to a guy who's kind of wealthy again. I figured out a way to use backtested historical data in sports and find patterns inside the matrix that a lot of people can't find. So basically, when you invest in the stock market, you're gambling on a stock on whether or not the stock's going to go up and go down. That's basically what the stock market is. People can say they know something. People can say they understand the stock market. But the reality of it is you're gambling with your money. You're trying to make your money grow by gambling on whether they're safer bets with small returns or more risky bets that you're hoping to have larger returns. Well, I figured out a way to use the exact same kind of patterns and systems that the people do that are some of the best traders in the world. And I use the exact same thing to create sorry, my headphones fell out here. I do the exact same thing to create there we go. Now I'm back again. Sorry about that, guys. I do the exact same thing by creating a portfolio of systems that you can use to trade sports like other people trade stocks. Now, you can go over to my website, which is sportstradingsystems.com, or you can join the $2 Club and you can get my book and access to me doing live seminars for free. It's only $2 a month. There's a link in the description below, and there's a great deal going on right now. It's $2 a month normally, and then also there's a great deal going on that is $12 for a lifetime membership. So again, the link is in the bottom of the description below. You guys can check it out. Now, we've got some huge things happening today. And again, Lance, the sports nerd, is hopefully going to join me a little later on for the show. We are having some technical difficulties, but I didn't want to be late for you guys. So I started the show. Hopefully Lance will jump in a little bit later on. Lance is going to jump in right now, actually. Let's see what happens. Now, I cannot see Lance, but I think you guys can see him. If not, you'll be able to listen to him. Lance, how are you today?
I'm not doing so well, obviously. We're having technical difficulties. I'm trying to remember if I ate some nuts today, because apparently there's this urban legend wherein if you eat nuts, there will be some technical difficulties happening along the way. So I'm trying to put a finger if I did eat nuts today. I can't remember it. Oh well, so now you can see me on the screen, so I'm there.
Yeah, I can
So
see.
that's a good sign.
I actually can't see you. So whatever's going on our end is our problem. I can't see you, but the people at home can see you, which is good to know. Lance, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here. I don't know about the nuts.
Okay.
I have no idea if that's a something that you grew up thinking. I'm not sure what that's really about. But anyway, we got a lot of people watching out there. We are broadcasting live on Facebook and on YouTube. And of course, we're going to go into lots of cool stuff out there. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to fire off some quick fire news. We call it news that just happened over the last 24 hours or so. Lance is going to read off the news. We'll read and react. And the rest of the show is actually based just around you guys. So if you guys want to leave comments, we'll answer any of your questions that you pitch into the comment section. We've also got some comments that came in from some of our readers that wrote into the mailbag. So we'll be able to do a little bit of everything. So Lance, let's start with the quick fire news.
Okay, so let's get the ball rolling with Super Bowl MVP Tom Brady. So apparently he just had knee surgery. So head coach Bruce Arians actually initially described the procedure as a quote-unquote cleanup of the knee, but it would take him 4 months to recover. So it looks like it's more than just a cleanup. So that would take him up until June to potentially be back in practice. So still barely just in time before they defend their Super Bowl title in 2021. But is this injury something to be concerned of for Tampa Bay, you think?
Well, look, I can speak from my own personal experience. I've had 4 knee surgeries. I had 3 arthroscopics that are considered cleanups, and then I had 1 reconstruction. The arthroscopics I bounced back fairly quickly with, and the reconstruction was a disaster. It took me months and months and months, probably 6 months to get back to even close to normal, and my knee never really did bounce back 100% for me. A lot of that falls on how I rehabbed. I'm not Tom Brady. I don't do Pilates. I don't do all these stretching exercises that I'm certain would have helped a lot. So a lot of it falls on me. So, but again, going back to my own experience, when I had the cleanups, for me, those were 3 or 4 weeks, and I was kind of back to normal. You remember when I had those, when I had 2 of the cleanups, I was under 18 years old. So obviously my body bounced back a little faster than that. And I also wasn't competing on a professional level. So there are different ways that different people heal. I'm going to say 4 months when they say that is really the optimal amount of time. And that'll include a lot of rehab. Tom will probably be back to running within a few weeks, maybe 6 weeks or so. If it's arthroscopic, it's really just depends on how fast the swelling goes down. And that's really the biggest concern. Anytime that they cut your body and they go inside and do things, you're going to have swelling. And for everybody, I think it's different. I know for me, I didn't have a lot of swelling in the first 2 surgeries. So I was very, very lucky. With the reconstruction, I had a tremendous amount of swelling. And with the very last arthroscopic that I had, which was a quote unquote cleanup, I did have a lot of swelling. I don't know why. I don't know specifically why it didn't swell in the beginning and then it swelled after a while. So I think they're going to say 4 months to get back to being an elite level athlete again. Not that I'm saying Tom Brady is an elite level athlete, but he's definitely a professional football player. But so yeah, I think 4 months is just being safe more than anything. And 4 months is perfect. Tom can jump back in June, be there for OTAs, work with the team. And then of course, once there's no organized practice, these guys are going to break up into groups and they're going to be able to work out together, whether it's at Tom's house or at a different location. They'll get together and they'll get their timing down. I don't think it's going to slow down Tom Brady at all. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I do agree with that opinion because luckily for him, it's not the knee that is the quarterback's main weapon. So if it was a shoulder surgery, then there's reason for concern, especially with this throwing shoulder. So luckily for him, he's not also known as a mobile quarterback. So he does need his knees to, of course, have some leverage to make deep throws or longer throws. But other than that, he's not known for really scrambling. And he does have a good offensive line also in front of him. So
yeah,
it would take time for him to recover. Just a normal timetable, I would suppose, for an operation like that. So he'll be back in good shape in no time.
Yeah, again, for a quarterback too, I think it's really going to depend on which leg it is. So Tom Brady's a right-handed thrower. So if it's his right knee, It'll probably take a little longer to come back because he has to push off of that leg. That's the leg that'll be pushed off on. If it's his left knee, it's a little more worrisome because I believe his left knee is the one that had the reconstruction done years ago. I'm not sure you remember, but I want to say 2011. I don't remember when it was, but Tom Brady lost the season, and it was because of somebody had fallen into him in the pocket, and his left knee got torn. So it was a reconstruction of his left knee. So if it's the left knee again, it's a little worrisome because then it could be another problem. If it's the right knee, it could be just something as simple as he stepped wrong and had a small tear in it. It's just got to be sewn up, and he'll be fine and ready to go. But again, he pushes off the right leg. So to me, I think it's two different conversations. If it's a right leg, it may affect the way he throws because he pushes off of it. If it's a left leg and the left leg's been hurting him, it could affect him psychologically. A lot of quarterbacks never recover from having somebody fall at their feet and getting injured that way because psychologically it's just something you can't control. You're always going to stand in the pocket. You're always going to step forward with that left leg, and someone's probably always going to be falling around your feet. So you'll always have that thought of like, oh man, it's going to happen again. Oh, it's going to happen again. Oh, it's going to happen again. I know for me, excruciating pain whenever I had my knee done, and it was whenever I hurt my knee, and I never want to feel that again. And every once in a while, I'll step the wrong way, or I'll be playing basketball, and I'll kind of like make a lateral move, and I'll think about it. So, let's see. Do you know which leg it is, Lance?
Apparently, they did not mention it in the article. Actually, it's based on an article by Yahoo Sports, by the way, but they did not mention specifically what knee it is that they are getting an operation on.
We got a comment from the section from the comments right now from Florence Uzbazio. That guy right there. He says he has the highest quarterback IQ. He can survive that. Yeah, he's a smart guy. He's obviously never, like Lance said, he's never been this amazing athlete. So I don't see that the knee's going to slow him down a lot. What else you got, Lance?
Okay, so speaking of another quarterback, so you may remember Marcus Mariota. So in this crazy quarterback carousel of a thing that we have in this offseason, apparently Mariota's market has seemed to have died down. So there were initial rumors of him being shipped out of the Las Vegas Raiders in their efforts to shed some money off their salary cap. But now there seems to be no suitors for Marcus Mariota. So what could be the reason behind this, John?
Well, I'll tell you the reason. There was never a market for Marcus Mariota. This was all started by the general manager, who made a smart play last year by grabbing Mariota as a backup quarterback, and then he realized to himself, well, I have this asset that we never really use. I've got a backup quarterback who maybe could start for some other teams, and if there's any interest out there in somebody getting him, I can get something back for him. I could pick up maybe a third rounder, a fourth round pick, something like that. Somebody willing to pay something for Marcus Mariota. There was a quarterback market out there. It was a really smart play by the GM to get the word out there and say, Marcus Mariota, everyone's talking about Marcus Mariota. Everybody wants Marcus Mariota. Nobody wants Marcus Mariota. It's nothing personal against Marcus Mariota. Marcus Mariota had his opportunity. He had his chance to be a starting quarterback in the NFL and did not play very well. So because of that, I don't think there's a market out there for him at all. So when you're asking me, why did the market dry up? I'm saying the market dried up because it was a rumor that there was ever a market to begin with. This is something that GMs do. They get the word out to one of their favorite writers. Hey, a lot of guys are asking about Marcus Mariota. It's crazy what they're asking for. Hey, we got an offer for Carson Wentz for 2 first rounders. It's crazy what they're asking for what they're offering for Carson Wentz. Hey, this guy's, it's always the same thing. And these things never come to fruition. But our media jumps on it because they don't understand what's happening, or maybe they're complicit in what's going on, and they generate it and they keep it going, and somebody hears it, and then, like we talked about last week, somebody says it, somebody hears it, somebody repeats it, now it's news. So just because somebody repeated what somebody else said doesn't, and there's never any accountability for how often some of these guys are wrong. To me, I wait for Adam Schefter. Schefter's never wrong, very rarely wrong. There's a few guys like that. A lot of the other guys are just they're just shooting in the dark, man. It's a crapshoot with these guys. So if you're asking about Marcus Mariota, I don't think Marcus Mariota had much of a market to begin with. Do you disagree with that?
No, I don't disagree with that. Actually, they even went as far as floating the idea that John Gruden might like Mariota more over Derek Carr, which is unfounded based on stats alone. I mean, Derek Carr has one of the better passer ratings in the NFL, even last season, and there's no way for him to actually beat Derek Carr. Talking about Marcus Mariota for that number one job. Here's the problem for Mariota, though. So he will be worth 10 million next season, and that's very steep for a backup quarterback. So if they are trying to shed some money off that salary cap, might be most likely be one of the casualties coming into 2021. So when he gets off the books, the question now is, will any team want him? Will any team get him, even as a backup quarterback? So that's a question that remains to be answered throughout this offseason.
Yeah, guys like Mariota have value. They have value simply for the simple fact that they carry this like high level of experience. So if your starter were to get injured and you had to throw a guy like Mariota in there, maybe you're not expecting superstar quality snaps from the guy, but you know that he's been in situations. He's been to the playoffs. He's a starting quarterback at some point in the NFL. High pressure was on him. He was second overall pick. So yeah, I think Marcus Mariota definitely has a market. Now, if Marcus Mariota assumes that his market is $10 million, Marcus Mariota will not have a job. But if Marcus Mariota assumes that his value is something a little more reasonable, maybe a $2, $3, even $4 million backup, an Andy Dalton type of contract that he could play for forever, I think, because he's a fantastic weapon to come off the bench and be your backup quarterback, because nobody's ready for a guy like that. Marcus Mariota plays almost like a Josh Allen type of game. He was supposed to be Josh Allen. He's supposed to be that big guy who can run, who could throw, and a smart player. He just never developed into that guy. And you know what? Maybe somewhere else under a different OC, different type of offensive plan, he could actually be that guy, but I'm not sure he's going to get the chance. Quarterbacks aren't getting second chances in the NFL anymore unless somebody gets hurt.
Yeah, indeed. There's only 32 jobs that you have in the NFL, and it's hard to fill those positions. You have to be the best of the best in order to get one.
Yeah, 100%. And like I said, people aren't giving these guys a second opportunity. You look way back, and then in like going back to even the 70s, you look at a guy like Terry Bradshaw. Terry Bradshaw drafted first overall. For that era, one of the greatest quarterbacks of the time, four-time Super Bowl winner. What people forget is that Terry Bradshaw's first 4 years in the NFL were a disaster, an absolute disaster. The fans hated him. The coaches didn't like him. He was a terrible player. There are clips and clips and clips on YouTube right now where you can go and watch Terry Bradshaw making the dumbest mistakes possible, and some oftentimes saving himself by the fact that he was such a physically gifted athlete, which again, a lot of people forget. Terry Bradshaw was a Ben Roethlisberger type before Ben Roethlisberger came along. He was a really big guy. He was hard to bring down, really tough player, but he wasn't very good his first 4 years. Peyton Manning was awful his first year. I mean, awful. He still holds the league record for most interceptions by a rookie. I believe it was like 28 interceptions in 16 games. He was terrible. But, there's no patience anymore. There's no patience to see what's going to happen and let these guys develop and get their way into year 2 or even year 3. So the game starts to slow down and they start to stop thinking and start playing. It's like, I need instant gratification right now. You came out, you weren't very good. Like Josh Rosen. Josh Rosen's picked in the top 10 by the Arizona Cardinals a few years ago. The next year, they pick another quarterback. I mean, that guy just never had a chance. He never had a chance to grow into a comfort level for himself. And it just happens more and more now. And guys like Marcus Mariota, unfortunately, I just think fall into that category. And I don't think he's ever going to get another opportunity unless he plays for a team with a guy who's going to get injured. And Mariota comes out and does the same thing that Tannehill did to him, which is comes out and goes, wow, this guy's totally outplaying the guy that he was playing for. So I just don't see it. I don't see it happening.
I don't see it happening as well for Marcus Mariota.
So I just got one of the messages from the chat just said Russell Wilson's camp is asking for a trade. Is that true?
I'm not racist. It's not necessarily. It's not necessarily exactly a trade request. It's more offloading the idea for a trade. So we're still back in that notion that his offensive line is not protecting him well enough. And aside from that, there hasn't much word from Russell Wilson's camp from that statement. But one statement like that can already caused dysfunction within the Seattle's organization, the Seahawks organization already, because the trust is not there. And they can explore the trade for Russell Wilson. I see some write ups wherein they are putting his value at least 3 first round draft choices for Russell Wilson, which I find that is not an accurate value because he's older. He's an older quarterback. You don't know how many years you can get out of him. I mean, he's hurt, and he's not really. He won't give you enough years to justify those 3 first round draft choices. So, and also he has a no trade clause, so he would have to choose his destination. So that would be hard for Seattle to find a suitor for Russell Wilson. So the
Plus,
idea has been floated. Yeah, yeah, that's the biggest reason.
Yeah, he's a jerk. I don't like Russell Wilson.
Yeah, so I believe that Russell Wilson will stay in Seattle. It's just hard to move his contract and move his deal, and he just has to eat up his words. And of course, for the benefit of the Seahawks, they have to improve the offensive line as well, so as to shut him up.
Well, look, that's been an issue there. It's not like the Seahawks haven't tried to improve their offensive line. Like, it's a misnomer out there to assume that the Seahawks have just not tried to fix their offensive line. They've tried. It just hasn't worked out very well. But I mean, here's really what the truth is. Russell Wilson has Ben Roethlisberger syndrome from before. He tries to do everything himself. You know, Ben's first 4 or 5 years in the NFL, he led the NFL in sacks. He was sacked more than anybody. And you could blame the offensive line, which wasn't great, but you have to be realistic in the fact that Ben Roethlisberger used to hang on to the ball longer than anybody. And Russell Wilson does the same thing. And he's constantly breaking the pocket at the first sign of what he thinks could be someone breaking through. Sometimes it's not somebody breaking through. It's just Russell saying, oh, shit, I'm only 5'11". I can't see anymore, and I got to get out of here. He breaks the pocket. He breaks that barrier that's around him, and he lets himself get sacked a lot outside the pocket. That happens a lot when you watch Seattle games. And it's the one reason that I don't actually like Russell Wilson's game. Now, I don't want to criticize Russell Wilson because he's obviously a superstar, but the reality of it is some of those sacks have fallen upon Russell Wilson. So, look, I think I read a statistic the other day that Russell Wilson has been sacked 40 or more times 8 years in a row. So at some point, you have to think to yourself, have they not had an offensive line there in 8 years? Because it seems like he's got enough time most of the year. The beginning part of the year, he was crushing it. He had plenty of time then. What happened? So, look, I don't know. No one's going to trade for him. That's not true. A lot of people are going to want to trade for him. Seattle's not going to trade him unless they just get 5 first-round draft choices, because that's a $39 million cap hit this year. So I think it's an unattainable trade, in my opinion. I don't think that's ever going to happen.
Yeah, the money itself alone is just astronomical. I mean, he is worth $32 million this year, and for the next 2 years, whoever team gets him will have to pay $37 and $40 million. So that's $87 million in 2 years. Whoever gets him, should he be traded. And the problem with Russell Wilson's game is that his height has just been a liability all throughout his career. I mean, he was good throughout the early years, but throughout part of his career, his height has been a liability because he couldn't see downfield that much. So he had to scramble. And if he does get out of the pocket, he'll get hit, he'll get sacked. And that's why part of the blame also of getting sacked too often also lies on him, on Russell Wilson himself. Because, well, you couldn't fault him for being that tall, or lack of height, that is, vertical height. And he just have to do with his physical skill set.
Yeah, I agree. So listen, if you guys are watching out there right now,
anyway, for the last...
we are taking questions from the audience. If you guys want to ask questions, we'll be happy to jump in and throw your questions out there. This entire podcast today is just going to be an interactive podcast. So if you guys have questions, please throw them out there. Lance, you got some more news for us. Let's do it.
Okay, so last quickfire news update for today. So it's about the Washington football team. So apparently Steve Harvey made a joke during NFL Honors that after 2 years, the best name that the Washington franchise can think of is the Washington football team. So now they are launching this new website called WashingtonJourney.com, wherein they are trying to change their name by the 2022 season. So some of the more popular suggestions for the Washington team's new moniker are the Generals, the Rhinos, and Justice. So those are just three names by which the Washington franchise might carry from 2022 and beyond. So, do you have any name suggestions for the franchise moving forward?
Can you hear me, Lance?
Oh, sorry, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. So I don't know what happened there, but I lost you for a second. So let me ask you a question. Did you say it was the Generals, the Rhinos, like the animal, the rhino with the horn?
Yeah, Rhinos and Justice. So Washington Justice.
Um, I don't mind the Washington Generals, but the Washington Generals are actually a famous like fake basketball team that used to play the Harlem Globetrotters.
Globetrotters. Yeah.
So they're literally the biggest losers in history because they've never win. So I even though it sounds okay, I would say no to that. The Washington Rhinos makes no sense at all. I'm pretty sure that America's never had rhinos as an indigenous species, so it would make no sense to name yourself after an animal that isn't from the area. And I guess the Justice would be okay. I mean, that's an okay thing. I don't understand that one. Yeah, I don't know, man. That one's a little bit. To me, I guess the Redskins doesn't work, but why then don't be the Redskins? Why not be the Red something? So the Washington. I don't know the answer to that question. It's a great question. I've never really thought about it. I've never given it a lot of thought, to be quite honest. Why not call them the Washington Senators or the Washington representatives or something that has to do with the Capitals? Those are all great names. They're already taken, but those are all great names because they actually have something to do with the city. Again, you look at the Houston Texans. Well, there are Texans inside in Houston's. That makes sense. They have the Houston Oilers before because it was oil country. Dallas Cowboys. There used to be Cowboys in Texas. You look at the Pittsburgh Steelers. That name comes from the people that used to work in the steel mills. So, to me, the name has to have something to do with the region or with the city. How about the Washington Liars? That would work. Talking about Congress. How about the Washington I'm full of shit or something like that? I don't know. I don't have a name. You got a good name you like?
Well, why not tag it to an actor like Denzel Washington's? That would be nice. Then have Denzel on the sidelines for the opening kickoff.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, something. I don't know. I mean, look, Dave Chappelle comes from Washington. He's pretty famous. How about the Washington Chappelles? Something like that. I don't have a great answer.
That has a nice ring to it. Yeah.
Look, I think your team needs to have something that sounds like they're coming in. They're going to be they're going to be like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Yeah. That sounds like someone's going to come in and rob you and shit. So I don't know. Washington definitely needs a new team. But while we're talking about that division, just got a question from the chat from Hans Garrett. Would Joe Tunney make sense for the Giants? He would make a ton of sense if he comes in at the right price. Joe Tunney, by the way, is an offensive guard, played for the New England Patriots up until this year. He's a free agent, and he is he's out there now. What is his salary going to be? I don't know, man. This guy might be a $10 million guard. I mean, that's really the issue.
So Joe Tunney's salary for 2020 was $14.8 million.
Right. So you're looking at a guy now that a little bit older, but still you're looking at him being $10-12 million. There's a lot of people that need interior line help this year. That seems to be something that everyone's looking for. So when you look at a guy like this and people really need a guy like this, it's going to drive his market up. And he's obviously one of the better offensive guards in football.
Yeah, indeed. And he is a disciplined football player, actually. And you're right about the fact that even interior defensive linemen now have the ability to just go for the quarterback by themselves. You have an
Yeah.
Aaron Donald, you have the Vita Veas. They have the capability alone by themselves,
Mm.
not just to eat one or two defensive offensive linemen, but rush the quarterback themselves. So that's why interior guard help will be much needed from the 2021 season and beyond. And given that Saquon Barkley will return, it would be nice to upgrade that O line so that he can just roam around through the trenches once he sees the holes. So that would be a good thing for the Giants if they have Joe Tunney.
Yeah, when you look at it now and you look at how good defensive tackles have become at not just slowing down the run, but slowing down the pass, I think it's such a huge, huge, huge need to have good interior linemen. And there was a time when only offensive tackles got that kind of money. You pay a left tackle 14 or 15 million, you pay your right tackle 9 million, and your interior linemen just didn't get a lot of money. They were in the $6, $7, $8 million range. Not that that's not a lot of money, but it certainly isn't in the left tackle range. But people are realizing now there's so many good interior linemen out there that can actually rush the passer and completely disrupt game plans, that you have to have strong interior linemen. So a guy like Tunney would definitely fit. Hey, you want to put him somewhere? We just talked about Russell Wilson in desperate need of offensive line help. You get about Joe Tunney and a couple other guys like that, and suddenly Russell Wilson is actually a guy who can not get crushed every time he backs up. It'll keep people out of his face. Small, short quarterbacks need to have that space in front of them. Hey, Lance, I got another one coming out of the chat right now. Should the Jags franchise tag a left tackle Cam Robinson? Robinson's another interesting guy who's going to be hitting the market right now, and he's only 25 years old. He's another guy that Jacksonville may lose. He played really, really well out there, but he wants to get paid. Now, Jacksonville has money, and they also have probably, most likely, a rookie quarterback coming in to take over under center who's going to need some protection. So if Jacksonville loses him, they're going to be in a situation. But if Jacksonville franchises him, I don't know what the franchise tag is for left tackles, but I'm going to say it's kind of what I said earlier. It's somewhere in the $15 or $16 million range. Is that right, Lance? Can you look that up?
Checking it up right now. So franchise tag.
So, let's say you got $60 million in cap room, which is I think where Jacksonville's at, if memory serves me correct, and you're going to spend $15 million on one guy. That takes up about a fourth of what you have an allocated cap room. Now, I don't know. And I don't know what their depth looks like either. So it's Jack Sparrow. It's a great question. I don't know what their depth looks like, but behind Robinson, and that's really the issue right now. I'd have to go through the depth chart and take a look. If they have someone that could slide in that's actually on a cheaper price tag, I would say let Robinson go, spend the money to acquire other things. Jacksonville has so many problems. $60 million in cap space could go a long way to actually fixing those problems. But were you able to find out what the franchise tag is for tackles?
Okay, so franchise tag for an offensive lineman is 14.5 million for 2021.
I was close.
Yeah,
close. So
close.
you're looking at close to $15 million for 1 year. Now, the best part about a franchise tag is that if you franchise somebody, that you get the opportunity to keep them for 1 year. So you're not married to a long-term contract. Keep the guy on a prove-it deal. Let him stick around, play for a year, and then you can try to develop somebody behind him. So you can go back in the draft this year, pick up another tackle, let Robinson play out for a year. Again, if you don't have somebody to back him up, and then next year you can let him go. Hopefully he has a fantastic year. So when he does go, you get yourself a nice compensatory pick back. That's the great part about free agency. So spend all your money this year. So think about it from a plan like this. You have $60 million to spend this year. Let's spend up to the cap. Let's spend as much money as we can this year doing long-term deals, making sure that next year we don't have to fill in a lot of spaces in free agency. So you franchise tag Cam Robinson. When he leaves next year, if you don't replace him with someone of equal or greater value, you end up with a compensatory pick. And that compensatory pick for somebody like this could be an extra third-round pick, an extra fourth-round pick, something that could come really in handy for the Jacksonville Jaguars as they continue to try to build this team. You got an opinion on this, Lance? Keep them, dump them, pay the $14 million. What are you thinking?
Okay, so my thing is Jacksonville has a lot of money this season to spend. They have about 77 million. definitely tons of money. No, number one in cap space for this year.
Hmm.
So, and the number two thing about Jaguars is that they have 11 draft picks this upcoming 2021 draft. So
Hmm.
here's what I would do with Cam Robinson. I would give him the franchise tag. So I would give him that 14.5 million for 1 year, and then I would use one of my draft picks to draft another offensive lineman, just to be able,
Hmm.
just to light a fire under him that his tenure in Jacksonville is not for the long term. It's just a reminder for him that there's this guy that can push you in practice or can eat up your playing time if you don't do well with that 14.5 million. So they have the luxury of spending big, and they have the luxury of getting a lot of young players through the draft that of course they can sign through cheaper rookie contracts. So at least it gives them two options that if indeed Cam Robinson doesn't play up to standard for that franchise tag, then they can let him go next season, and they have a young offensive lineman who could hopefully fill up his position.
Yeah, I like the idea. I mean, look, there's a lot of when you have $77 million to spend, 11 draft picks, number one overall pick, you got a lot of flexibility to rebuild your team pretty quickly. Like, it won't take long to go in there and really rebuild. We're going to take one more question from the chat, and then we're going to go into our mailbag. But if you guys want to leave more questions in the chat, we'd be more than happy to answer them along the way. Now, this one comes from Hans Garrett. Thanks for answering my earlier question. This one isn't NFL related, but Kyrie said he wants to see the NBA change their logo into a Kobe-inspired one. What do you think about that? I was thinking, why not Jordan? So I had the same thought, Hans, and I'm sure Lance has an opinion on this as well. I had the same thought. I thought, well, if you're going to do it, you really should do it for the guy that everyone thinks is the greatest basketball player of all time, in Michael Jordan. That's what you should really do. Kobe Bryant doesn't come up in a conversation most times when people talk about top 5 players of all time, just because his game is so similar to Michael's. He just doesn't get ranked in there. Everyone's like, well, Michael's better than Kobe. That's already a settled fact. Move Kobe out of the way. Now, if you want to talk about greatest players of all time, you got to really start adding in some big guys and some different types of players. So look, I understand it's an emotional thing to say Kobe Bryant died, and because of his death, that we should honor him by putting him as the logo for the NBA, whatever it is, for the NBA. Man, I just blanked out for the league. I'm sorry, for the NBA league. Sorry, I'm reading chats as I'm talking. So for the NBA league, but I think you got to put that aside. I wouldn't mind like maybe making a trophy called the Kobe Bryant trophy or something like that. But when you're going to change the logo, I think you've got to change the logo to the greatest basketball player of all time, or you just don't change it at all. And I don't think that you use a player's picture. Like, I saw the logo idea that Kyrie had. He wanted to put Kobe as a picture on there as the logo. And I don't think you change it to a certain player's picture, because 10, 20 years from now, there's going to be another player's picture. But over the last 30 years, we've had the same guy. I believe it's Bob Cousy was the original guy that was the logo. They kind of like drew him and put him in there. So I have no problem with changing that little symbol, that little fake dude guy that they use. But I'm not sure that putting an actual picture of somebody in there really makes sense to me. So what do you think? Do you think, I know you're a huge Kobe Bryant fan, or at least you were. Kobe Bryant, should he be in there as the logo for the NBA?
Okay, so this is a very sensitive topic for me, being a basketball fan, and I have a lot to unpack here. So first things first, it would be nice to have an award named after Kobe Bryant. So
yeah,
I'm not sure if the NBA has that comeback player of the year sort of thing, and somehow Kobe Bryant has overcame the odds with his Achilles injury and came back to become, if not the old Kobe Bryant, but score 60 in his final game. So it's fitting to have your comeback player of the year award named after Kobe Bryant. And sadly, Kobe Bryant on the logo, as much as I respect Kobe Bryant's game, but essentially he was Michael Jordan's copycat. I know it's a controversial take, but all of the things that Kobe Bryant did, Michael Jordan can do. It's basically a next generation Michael Jordan. And we all know that Kobe Bryant tried to copy deep down into the mannerisms of Michael Jordan in game. So he was really looking up to Michael Jordan. And the problem also with putting Michael Jordan's logo in the NBA logo, if they are to revamp it, is that the most popular logo for Michael Jordan is the Jumpman. And if they try to take it,
yeah.
what
could
what
happen.
what other logo would they use aside from the Jumpman? And they
Yeah.
would have to go through intellectual property litigation with that, with the Jordan logo. So for me, if they are to revamp the NBA logo, it would be better to revamp it without any silhouettes at all. It works for the NFL. It works for the NHL. I mean, MLB, it also works because it's just a generic silhouette of someone with a bat. So why couldn't we work with that, a generic NBA logo without any silhouettes whatsoever that encapsulates the game throughout its history? I mean, somebody can do that. I mean, there are a lot of talented artists in this world that can pitch a logo, not necessarily better than Jerry West's silhouette, but encapsulates the essence of the game with just one iconic brand.
Yeah, I don't disagree. We got one more comment from Hans who's saying, that's what I want to hear. Thank you. You set aside the emotional factor. Jordan is the better choice if they change it. Listen, I'll finish it up with this. Kobe Bryant is unfortunately set up in a position where he is the greatest player. I think, in my opinion, he is the greatest player of his generation. But unfortunately, his generation is sandwiched between Michael Jordan and LeBron James.
Yeah.
And it just gets overshadowed from a player standpoint. I think Michael and LeBron are both better than Kobe, and that's why Kobe gets moved down. Kobe was obviously a bastard to play against. I mean, he was just a vindictive, machine. It was hard to slow him down. Like, once he got going, he was just on fire. So no disrespect to the man. Obviously, he's passed away. Tremendous amount of respect for him as a player, as a man, from what he did after playing basketball. So no offense to Kobe Bryant. I just don't think he should be on the logo. Neither does Lance. Now we're going to dive into the mailbag. If you guys have any more questions, please put them in the comments, and we will get to them later on. By the way, Lance, before we dive into the mailbag, we do have some quick breaking news. I just got a text message. The Dolphins, the Jets, the Saints, and the Raiders have all talked about Russell Wilson. Some people around the league are saying that a trade could happen. So this is huge news. Now, we talk all the time about how this could be spun by somebody. So, this isn't real. We always assume some of these things aren't real. These things could be spun into something different. If I'm Seattle and you're telling me you're going to send me Tua, who's basically Russell Wilson light, and you're going to send me, 3 first-round draft picks along with it, one of which is the 3rd overall pick this year, I'm talking. I'm having that conversation. I am having that conversation right now, because if there's a quarterback I like, I take the quarterback. And then I find a trade partner for somebody that'll give me something for Tua. Maybe I pick up another second rounder from somebody like Pittsburgh or the Saints for Tua. Or maybe I end up getting a first rounder from the Saints. I end up with 3 first rounders this year. And I got tons and tons and tons of potential to really rebuild my team pretty fast. I get to pick a quarterback 3rd. I get the Dolphins. I think they're 26, and the Saints are at 28. I think they're somewhere in there. I may have messed those numbers up, but having 3 picks like that would be enormous. Maybe I start trading back into the next year. Next year I get a first-round pick. This year I get a second-round pick for my first-round picks. There's just so much flexibility in rebuilding your roster. Your fan base loses their mind, and you suffer for a year with a $39 million cap hit. But next year, you're starting all over again with a rookie quarterback who got to play this year. It was forced out there. A ton of weapons already on your offensive side, including DK Metcalf, and enough draft picks to be able to really restock your cupboards. So I don't know. I might be wrong. I might be wrong, and this might happen. I don't think it's going to happen, but there's a good chance that it might happen. I just want to tell you, I got that text message. That's interesting, right? So what do you think? Dolphins, Jets, Saints, or Raiders?
Yeah,
who's most likely to get him out of those 4?
So aside from a text message, actually, Pro Football Focus had a tweet that essentially repeated what you mentioned.
Oh, really?
So who's the yeah? So it just came out 16 minutes ago. So who would likely be the trade partner for the Seahawks? Okay, so
So
I
hang on.
would have to cancel
Here's your
out.
choices. Wait.
Okay.
Here's your choices. Dolphins. Let's just go by what I got in this text. Dolphins, Jets, Saints, or Raiders. Dolphins,
Mhm.
Jets, Saints, or Raiders. Go.
Okay. So I would have to cancel one team immediately, and that's the Saints, because I don't want to help another NFC team to basically have a free path to the playoffs if I'm an NFC team.
Well,
And
also, real quick, let me just jump in there. The Saints are like $70 million over the
yeah,
cap right now, so I don't
yeah,
know how they would even be able to get Russell Wilson in there and under the cap. So just let me just throw that out there really quick.
yeah.
But you have to admit that offense is probably perfectly put together for somebody like Russell Wilson. It was definitely put together for somebody the same
Indeed.
size and
Yes.
Drew Brees. And Russell's a little more mobile, so that's definitely an offense for Russell Wilson. But go ahead. So you took out the Saints. Now you got the Raiders, the Jets, and the Dolphins.
Okay, so Raiders, Jets, and the Dolphins. Actually, the most intriguing trade aspect for me, or like the trade team for me here, would be the Dolphins. I mean, they are the most complete team out of the three. They just had 10 wins last season.
Yeah.
And apparently, one of the criticisms for that team is in the quarterback position, because Tua wouldn't throw to tight windows, he couldn't throw deep, this and that and this. So if you put a Russell Wilson, who is a proven veteran, and then that improves her offense exponentially, and then draft like a Chase or a Devontae Smith with that third pick, then it's game over for
Yeah.
the Miami Dolphins. So if the Dolphins could somehow cling into that number 3 pick, though, because Seattle would want that in terms of their rebuilding, because the
Yeah.
moment Russell Wilson leaves the building, that's an automatic rebuild already for Seattle. It's like you're
Yeah.
giving up for next season, potentially 2022, and hopefully bounce back 2023. So you're tearing the building down. And once you tear the building down, you would need all of your draft aspects. So if they do trade Wilson to the Miami Dolphins, the Seahawks would definitely want that number 3 pick. Miami can give it because they could find somebody else, a wide receiver, late in the draft, just to give Russell Wilson some weapons in Miami.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. I'm just thinking to myself right now, our video editor is going to just have a hell of a time with the show, right?
Yeah.
It's like all over the place. He's going to be sitting there for hours just trying to figure out how to make clips. This is going to be such a shit show for him. Hey, Ben, if you're listening out there, sorry about that, buddy. Hey, let's jump into the mailbag real quick. We've got some mailbag questions coming in from our website, which is whatsonsports.com. Here comes the first question.
Okay, so this comes from Honus from Santa Clara,
Honus.
California. John Lynch
Hey,
has
Honus.
essentially named Jimmy Garoppolo as their starter in 2021. So how will the 49ers campaign with him? How will the 49ers campaign unfold, I suppose, with him back under center?
Well, look, if you look at what Garoppolo's done out there, like Garoppolo's won like 3 games for every game he's lost as a starter for the San Francisco 49ers. It's not quite that. It's like 3.8 games for every game that he's lost. So he's obviously a winning quarterback. Garoppolo doesn't make a lot of really stupid mistakes, and I think he's learned from Tom Brady and the Patriots when he was there on how to be a professional. So I think that having your starting quarterback back, any team getting back their starting quarterback makes them exponentially better. You never knew who was going to be the 49ers quarterback last year from week to week. Now, along with that being an issue last year, the 49ers were decimated by injuries. They were the one team last year that had so many injuries up and down both sides of the field. So they had their wide receivers at one point. I think there was one game where they didn't know who they were going to start at wide receiver. Their offensive line had issues. Their defensive line, which is what really is the glue that holds that really good defense together, had injury after injury after injury. Richard Sherman missed games. I mean, that team just really couldn't field the team that they had put together to get on the field. So there's a bad part to that, and there's a good part to that. when you look at it, the San Francisco 49ers 2 years ago were in the Super Bowl. They were a very good team. They were predicted to be a very good team last year as well. In fact, a lot of people had them going back to the Super Bowl again. Some people even had them winning it. So having all of those injuries forced a lot of people that weren't going to play to have to play. And that's not a bad thing. That means that your team this year, if everybody comes back healthy, just got exponentially deeper. You've got a lot more players now that you can deep dive into and pull out and say, hey, you know what? This linebacker was a starter last year. Now he's the backup. So if somebody does get hurt, we plug him in. Or if a guy needs a blow, guy needs a break, you pull him out and you can pull guys in. Your rotation just got so much deeper. A lot of guys got a lot of rest last year on their bodies because they didn't take a lot of hits because they were hurt. So if everyone's rehab comes along on schedule, I think, and Garoppolo comes back, that's a tough division that they're in. But I truly believe that the San Francisco 49ers are going to be very, very good again. I also believe that the 49ers are going to make some type of sneaky deal and bring in a James Conner or some running back that's going to help them along the way with their rotation. They like to rotate backs. And I think they're going to go out and get one more offensive weapon as well. So I think the 49ers are going to load up the offensive side of the football a little bit, give Garoppolo maybe the veteran wide receiver that he hasn't had out there. And I think that team's going to be scary again. I think it's going to be a very good team. What about you? You think the 49ers got a chance to come back?
Yeah, so here's the take. For all of the injuries that happened to them last year, they still managed to win 6 games. So that's an indication of how deep their talent pool is.
Yeah,
so they were able to plug a lot of people, and they had like day-to-day people coming in week by week to be able to have a competitive team on the field, and they still managed to win 6 games. So what more if you have a Jimmy G, if you have the likes of Mostert, if you have the likes of the other starters like a Deebo Samuel or a Brandon Ayuk, and of course George Kittle is already healthy, ready to run in 2021. So you have your starters. Yeah, so you have your starters who somehow got you to the Super Bowl playing already, and that could be at least plus 2 wins already just by having Jimmy Garoppolo in. Or 3 wins, let's say. So from 6-10, they could easily be like 9-8 already. And of course, there will be games wherein they are playing against lesser opposition, which helps them also have easier victories. So especially in the competitive NFC West, they do need all the weapons that they can get. So here's also an interesting take about what happened with the 49ers. So they were able to give playing time to their backups, and potentially some teams might be interested or might be taking or reaching out to John Lynch, the GM, on the availability of these backups because they think that they can improve or they can plug in these players onto their own rosters and also improve. So they might be fielding calls for their backups, especially those who really showed that they were something in 2020, and they can get a draft pick. They can get another player in return who can provide the same performance but of lesser monetary value. So for that one season of dysfunction, to say the least, but still a 6-10 record, the things are looking bright for the San Francisco 49ers. Granted that everybody who was injured in 2020 plays in 2021 like they did before they got injured.
Today's show is sponsored by us, actually, over at What's on Sports. We have a brand new $2 Sports Club that's probably the best deal on the internet. You guys can go over to the $2 Sports Club right now and check out what's available. But let me tell you really quick, there's a link in the description just underneath this video. You can go over and check out the link. But before you go, let me tell you, we do have a special guest that's about to appear inside the members area in about 17 days. His name is Michael Francis. He is a former mob boss who is quite possibly one of the most famous people on YouTube. Michael was involved in a lot of really cool stuff, including sports gambling when he was a member of the Francesi family. I'm sorry, of the Bonanno family, crime family in New York. So you can check that out. There'll also be some really cool stuff, including my new book, which is called The Scoremetric Secret. This is a guide that teaches you how to use sports analytics to profit and make money. It's a zero correlation system. You can see that right there, which means that you can use sports lines to invest. You can trade sports instead of trading stocks. Yes, the stock market has been great over the last couple of years. And yes, it is about to take a massive crash with all the things going on, like the things that happened with the boys and girls that took over the GameStop stock, and what's going to be coming up as the ramifications of what happened from coronavirus and all the money that's been spent that has to be figured out how to be replaced. Now is the time to get out of the stock market with some of your investments and jump into a brand new market. So this book comes along free when you join our $2 Sports Club. Again, there's a link in the description below. It's $2 a month. And we're running a great deal right now. $12 gets you a lifetime subscription. You can go over to whatsonsports.com and take a look, or you can go into the description and click the link. Lance, let's go to another question right now from our friends in the mailbag. Here you go.
Okay, so here we go from Giovanni of Ohio. So hello, Giovanni, if you're listening or watching. So how crazy will it be if Pat McAfee really played for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last season?
Well, you know what? The way this question is phrased, like how crazy would it be? Like, no offense to Pat, who I happen to be a big fan of. I've always been a fan of Pat McAfee. I thought he was an incredibly athletic punter. He gave the Colts a new dimension that a lot of people didn't have. And one of the reasons that I truly like Pat McAfee is he comes from Pittsburgh, like I do. So a lot of his sensibility and the way he talks and his thought process is something I'm familiar with. For those of you that have lived in a city for a long time, raised in one city, and you leave the city and you run into people from your city, you notice that people kind of have the same thought process, or at least I have. That goes pretty much the same for almost everywhere except for Florida and California that I've lived in. And those people just think like whatever. They're so random. It's hard to really pin down a real thought process from people. But if you're from areas like Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Chicago, people kind of had the same kind of sensibility. So I've always enjoyed Pat McAfee. When he was on Twitter, I used to follow him back in the day. I still follow him, I think. But I don't go on Twitter very much. It's a cesspool. But I do watch the Pat McAfee show. Big fan of what he's done over there. Guy's built a huge empire. Actually, that I think is going to continue to grow. He was super smart to get on YouTube. He was super smart to get things going, and he would have been super dumb to go and play for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because the word that I heard was that he was only going to go in for a week or two, but he couldn't pass the COVID protocols at the time because their punter got hurt. I would have not given up my show, everything he's built over there, his sponsorships and things like that, just to go and punt for a week. Now, there's another side that says if he would have done that, it would have raised his profile and it would have made the show even better. Maybe. But the reality of it is I don't think it would have been that crazy. And I don't think it would have been that life-altering. The coolest part would have been that Pat, who, again, I'm a fan of, would have gotten himself a Super Bowl ring, because anybody that plays one that's on the roster at all at any time throughout the season for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers ends up getting a Super Bowl ring. So I think it would have been an interesting story, Lance. I think it would have been kind of cool to look back and go, wow, Pat McAfee got a ring for only playing one game. But I'm not sure that it would have been a quote-unquote crazy story. What do you think about the Pat McAfee thing?
So it would be nice to actually see him back in the roster. I mean, he's just 33 years old, so he has a lot of fresh legs coming into the game. And if he does check in, even if it's 1 week, then I have a new favorite team for 1 week and 1 week only, which is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then I could pledge my allegiance to another team after he doesn't suit up anymore. So It would be nice, actually, just to see Pat McAfee catching the Lombardi trophy from Tom Brady and not somebody else. That guy can party as hell. So it would be nice to actually just have him for that victory party.
Yeah.
I mean, he could be drunk as hell, just like Tom Brady, and it's a good time for Tampa Bay. And not to mention, he somehow completes his career with the Super Bowl ring, even though he just played for 1 week.
Yeah, it would have been a hell of a story. And you're right. He definitely would have made that boat parade crazy. But I just, as far as like the actual play, being crazy that way, I'm not sure it would have been that big of a deal. But yeah, it would have been a cool story. Would have been a great story for a guy to come out of retirement, punt for a game or two, end up with a Super Bowl ring. I mean, that's just, you can't end your career on a better note. Let's go to our next question. It's coming from our mailbag. Let's do it.
Okay, so this is coming from Sean from Wisconsin. What's up with JJ Watt's mitochondria and Scary R's tweets? So he's trying to make us into some sort of Sherlock Holmes, John. There's mystery behind these tweets. apparently.
JJ Watt is one of the smartest guys in all of sports when it comes to social media. That guy is always leaving the perfect tweet, the perfect comment that really, really gets people talking. And he's just continuing that path right now. Absolutely, positively brilliant of JJ to leave these things out there, get people wondering what's going on. You get people talking without ever having to say something. I mean, that is absolutely positively genius. You look at these two tweets, they mean absolutely nothing. I think they mean absolutely nothing. And I think that somehow he has gotten half of the sports world to talk about a mitochondria, which most people didn't even know what a mitochondria was up until 2 days ago. He got most of the sports world to talk about it and to speculate, oh, wow, he's going to go to Buffalo. Oh, wow, he's going to be in Green Bay. The idea of social media is to take over, and a lot of guys don't get this because they're on social media all the time. When you tweet all the time and you do something all the time on social media, all you're doing is diluting the power that you have. When you're somebody like JJ Watt, you throw out a comment here or there or a tweet here or there, it takes over a 24-hour news cycle. Like, what does this mean? What's going to happen now? This is a guy who's absolutely, I will say this, Lance, and then I'll let you take over. This is a guy who is absolutely positively loving free agency. All the attention that he's getting. I mean, I just saw a rumor posted, I think on Bleacher Report or something. I can't remember where I saw it now. It might have been on Twitter, saying that, offers are all the way up to $16 million for J.J. Watt.
Wow.
J.J. Watt is not a $16 million player, but he has somehow manipulated this entire situation by asking for his release from the Texans early, getting that release, and allowing himself to go out there and really get his name out there before anybody else. There are going to be a lot of cap casualties and some big names, maybe even names that rival J.J. Watt. But J.J. Watt was smart enough to get himself out there early and create a frenzy and a market to get that guy. It's absolutely brilliant, in my opinion. What does it mean? I have no idea. But is it cool? Hell yeah. It's a lesson for everybody on how to use social media to move forward in whatever you want to do. What do you think?
So another case of the NFL not leaving the news cycle, even though we were weeks away from Super Bowl 55. We're still talking NFL deep into February and coming into March with just one tweet. That is one line. So funny that there are articles in the internet that compiles the so-called the Sherlock Holmes, the so-called investigative whatnots that somehow replied to his mitochondria tweet, wherein they're saying that there's C in mitochondria, so he might be going to Cleveland, and there's mitochondria in cheese, so he might be going to Wisconsin. So all of these comical responses boils down to the fact that JJ Watt gets talked about and the NFL remains in the news just because of that tweet. So what if he really just learned about the mitochondria by watching a documentary on Netflix or something, and then he just tweeted it out because he was so amazed with how small a mitochondria is, being the power of a cell. And of course, it wouldn't stop the Sherlock Holmes of the world to try to digest or read between the lines of what he is trying to say. So it's a masterful job by J.J. Watt. As early as he announced that he was being let go by the Texans, he had some classic tweets like the DoorDash tweet, wherein he takes him 1 hour to thumb through DoorDash, what more free agency, and the free agency is a wild tweet. So he can frame all of these tweets because they're all gold, they're all classic. And it goes to show that JJ Watt really is a cerebral person, that even his tweets go through a thorough thought process.
Yeah, if I had to guess, I think JJ Watt made $17 million last year. He's probably got a team that does this for him. So, and that team understands that, number one, controversy is king. And number two, no publicity is bad publicity. So as long as they're talking about you, especially when you're on the market right now, like you're literally on the market right now, people are trying to decide your value. Well, the more people talk about you, the higher your value is. And that's really how simple it is. As long as they're not saying that you're doing bad things, committing crimes, hurting children, doing drugs, the more people that talk about you, the higher your value is. JJ Watt actually gets it. Let's do our last question before we wrap up the show. Lance, who's this from?
Okay, so this comes from Ernest from Boston, Massachusetts. Hello, Ernest.
Hey, Ernest.
So, with everything he is doing lately, is Cam Newton pleading for a return to New England by praising Bill Belichick?
Absolutely not. I found his comments I think a couple days ago talking about Belichick to be very very candid. I think that's his actual opinion of Bill Belichick. Um, and if he had a bad opinion of Bill Belichick, I don't think he was going to bring it up. So it's like breaking up with a girlfriend. So I've been lucky enough and unfortunate enough at the same time to have a lot of relationships in my life. You know, been married a few times, tons of girlfriends. They've all ended, but they've all ended, and I try to say nothing but nice things about those people. So there are a lot of bad qualities about the people that I broke up with. Obviously, we all have bad qualities. I choose not to live in those moments of those bad qualities. Instead, trying to remember the good things. Now, I do that partially for them because I don't want to say bad things about them because I was with them at some point. There's no reason for me to speak poorly of somebody that I spent a part of my life with. I also do it for myself because I want to remember the good things. And so with that combination, I'm going to guess that Cam Newton, if this is his last year, if this truly is the last year that Cam Newton plays football, and he wants to leave on a good note. I don't think he wants to leave burning down the house. And I think that maybe he actually genuinely had some strong feelings for Bill Belichick. Like, I enjoyed playing for you. I learned a lot. You know, the things he said, I don't think were things we haven't heard before. Bill Belichick is a scholar of the game. Everybody talks about Bill Belichick talking about players from Lawrence Taylor back and just going into like showing you game tape that he has. Like, it was the way his father showed him football. That's how Bill Belichick has been brought up. He loves the game of football, not only today, but the game of football going back all the way back into the 40s and 50s. So I don't think Cam Newton said anything that isn't true that I haven't heard about Bill Belichick before, and I do not believe that it was used as a pathway to get back to New England. Would he like to play for New England again? I'm sure he would. I'm sure he'd like to play for somebody. I'm not sure he wants to go back to New England, but I'm sure that he wants to play for somebody. So maybe it's all part of polishing up his image to end up as a quarterback for somebody. But to me, I'll say the same thing I've said all year long. You listen to Cam Newton talk in that interview and how he explains what's going on, how he adds the nuance in the conversation. And Cam Newton to me is a guy that should be sitting in a Monday Night Football booth next year as one of the guys talking to us about the game. But what do you think? Do you think this is all trying to get back in Bill Belichick's good graces?
No, I don't think so because throughout the years, Cam Newton has been one of the players who has always kept it 100, whether he is sad, devastated, frustrated, or just plainly happy. Remember when he lost the Super Bowl and the newsmen were interviewing him and he couldn't say a thing because he's keeping it 100, that he's really frustrated during that time. So he couldn't say a word because that's what he's feeling. So he has been that way all throughout his career, even with that heckler 16-year-old in his own camp. So he tried to talk to him nicely and graciously and in a classic manner because that's the way he is. He knows how to adjust through situations and he doesn't fake anything. So with that question, he was just merely saying what he thought of Bill Belichick, that he is this kind of guy. And again, going back to your rant days ago, wherein the mainstream media doesn't get it right, here's one classic example about Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick has been built into this Emperor Palpatine kind of player, or coach rather, that he controls everything and he's no cool. He doesn't have any funny bone in his body. Well, apparently he does. He has a lighter side into him. He has a good side into him that not a lot of people know. And Cam Newton just opened up a different side of Bill Belichick's personality. So now we would see Bill Belichick in a different light now because there's a testimony from someone who played for him last year that he is this kind of guy. And for all the criticism for Bill Belichick, for all the criticism about Cam Newton, let's not forget that the Patriots still won 7 games last season, despite a receiving core that is not better than any college receiving core. I mean, Alabama's receiving core was way better than New England's receiving core.
Way better.
So with that kind of receiving core, you still won 7 games? That's a good season for all indication, and that's a testament to Bill Belichick's genius.
Yeah, actually, really hard to disagree with that. Really hard to disagree with that. If you guys have any time, the NFL Network did a special last year talking about the greatest players of all time, and Bill Belichick was part of the roundtable. It was Rich Eisen. I don't remember. Oh, was it Collinsworth? Eisen, Collinsworth, and I think Bill Belichick. And Bill Belichick was fantastic on this show. And I just think it wasn't like, he's not a TV type of guy, but he was fantastic. The amount of knowledge and the reverence he had for some of these players and how excited he was to sit across the table from Jim Brown or Emmitt Smith or even Tom Brady and just talk football was really, really awesome. It's just fantastic. If you get a chance to watch it, shows you a side of Bill Belichick that you probably don't ever see in anything else. So anyway, that wraps up the show for right now. Lance, it was great to not see you today. I can hear you, but I can't see you. But it's great to not see you today. Thank you all for listening out there. Thank you guys for your comments. It kept the show really flowing. And we'll see you next Tuesday at 10 a.m. live on Facebook and on YouTube.